News that matters. You're watching Fox 40.
Extremely damaging, a threat to America's economic and national security, the foundation for a recession. That's what's been said over the last few months about a potential rail strike. Such a walkout was derailed yesterday when the U.S. Senate joined the House in passing a bill forcing the unions and the companies involved to accept the labor agreement the Biden administration helped broker back in September. The president signed their work into law this morning. I'm live now with Lance Hastings, the president of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, the CMTA. Lance, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I have to ask, how worried have you been over the last 2 weeks as two union units rejected the deal that had been on the table and signaled that they were indeed moving toward a strike?
Well, we actually been worried for the last 2 months because until a deal comes together and is signed, you never really know how it might go. And because of the politics of both the government, but also between the debate and the negotiations, you never really know until it comes closer to it. But these last 2 weeks have been rather concerning. And I applaud the president for taking such an early action last week to say we need to make this happen. And again, applaud the Congress for acting so swiftly. And again, the president signing today the order.
How much do your members rely on the rails to do business, and what kind of goods are traveling around and then in and out of California on those tracks?
We rely more heavily than people would imagine. Everyone sees trucks on the highways, but you don't see the rails rolling down the tracks. And so many of our inputs are heavy, expensive, and voluminous that they have to travel via rail. And in many cases, the products that we make are so large as well, the best way to get them to market is through rail. So what I call the first mile. There's so much emphasis on the last mile with retail and things getting to our porches, but that first mile I think is often overlooked. So the impact would have been severe. And I think what we're hearing right now is a collective sigh of relief across the entire economy because we've reached an agreement to make sure that commerce continues to move.
If this strike had gone forward, it was set to start on the 9th with fears that some of the rail companies would start shutting down freight operations even earlier, which also had implications for Amtrak because it shares track in some areas. Would your members have had anything needed for sale before the end of the year already out and in the pipeline? I put this question to Rachel Michelin of the California Retailers Association last week, and she felt that most Christmas items would have already been in place, but obviously you're dealing with some different kind of merchandise. Would you have still needed to get things someplace by the end of the year?
Yeah, critical infrastructure, it's always going. It's a 365. Every day we need to be moving products. Retail is set usually a season and a half ahead of schedule. The ports have already adapted to that. My friend Rachel, I'm glad that she's observed that because the Christmas selling season is going to go well. It's what would happen in January and February that would be in question. Because of the lead time on many manufacturing processes, it could take a week or two in some cases to make something, and getting that to market would be compromised greatly if there were a rail strike in the country.
Paid sick leave was the major sticking point when we were again on the precipice of a rail strike. Yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders pointed out that these employees are working at dangerous jobs in inclement weather and have zero paid sick leave when several of the big companies had more than $1 billion in profits in the third quarter. Now, President Biden says that issue will actually be worked out in the future. Lots of people listening right now will think of your association, the companies you represent, as the people who may make the decisions about offering paid sick leave to workers. Don't work environments simply work better when employees know they have a safety net?
They do, and that's what the negotiations are for, and I think that's why they've been rather intense over the last couple of months. But I think there was a recognition that of the terms that had been agreed to, let's put those in place, and we'll continue to sit down and negotiate what those next outcomes might be. But to have it held up and risk the economic progress that we have, especially coming out of COVID, over which we had no control. But the Congress had control over a matter, and I think they made the right decision by putting in the provisions into law. Let's keep the rails moving, and then they will continue negotiations. I don't think negotiations will actually ever stop.
Okay, well, that is going to be very encouraging for many families who are tied to this industry. We heard the president today with the visit of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, talking about manufacturing and boosting it here, not affecting what's going on overseas. With this strike hurdle out of the way, what's on the horizon for California manufacturers?
Well, we're hoping for a bright future. I mean, again, we're coming out of COVID, which has been very challenging for manufacturing. We have an industry sector that has the most attractive wage base. We're the largest producing state in the nation. We have the most number of employees at over 1.3 million. So I think the future for California manufacturing is at a renaissance, a period of time that we've not seen, at least in the last decade. And now we can really pivot. But what we do need is the acknowledgement and support of the government and business leaders that manufacturing is, in fact, the core of the state and national economy. Literally, if you don't have manufacturing, you don't have an economy. And bolstering that over the next year or two, even in challenging economic times that we find ourselves in, supporting manufacturing is incredibly important for the well-being of the state, especially as we navigate between the fifth and fourth largest economy in the world. If we had a rail strike and if we don't support manufacturing, there's no way that we're going to become the fourth largest economy in the world.
All righty, thank you so much for your insight on this day when the president has signed this bill and averted officially that rail strike. We appreciate you.
Great, thank you.